Raising teenagers is not an easy thing. It's a difficult thing to raise teenagers. Wow. Today, we're going to talk about that, about raising teenagers. This is Now Tell Us. I'm your host, Anthony Morore. In the studio today, we have a psychologist, Angela Karanja, who's going to be talking to us about this very topic. And she's got quite an experience in it. So we better go and meet her to learn about this. I don't know whether you've been there raising children, raising teenagers, to be specific. If you're not, then sometime in the future you might get there. So this conversation is necessary. So join me as we go together to meet our guest today, Angela. Here we go. Hello, Angela.
Hello, Anthony. I am so delighted to be here and thank you so much for inviting me to Tell Us Now. So let's see what we're going to chat about. I am excited about the topic and I know our guests, our audience are going to glean so much because I know from the conversations we've had, it's going to be a good one. So you guys stay tuned because there'll be some gems falling.
Oh, yeah, we are excited to have you here. And I'm as excited as our guests, our viewers today, our audience today. And I ask each and every one of you to please share our video and invite your friends. If you have questions, please ask them. If you have a comment, we appreciate every feedback that you give us. So let's get into the show. First and foremost, we would be interested in knowing who is Angela.
Oh, thank you so much, Anthony. I am a woman, as in my gender. I am a mother as well, a mother of teenagers, and I'm also a psychologist, and I specialize especially with parenting teenagers. So here we are, and I'm excited to be chatting about this topic because, as you said earlier, it's a challenging time to be in teenage years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's even more challenging for parents, for teachers, for carers, even for the society, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we see all these kids, there's a lot of changes happening in them and therefore, there's a lot of changes that must happen in us so that we are able to connect with them. And I think that's the topic we're going to be talking about today. And it's going to be especially on being leaders. How can we be influential leaders to these young people? So I'm excited about it. And I'm sure as we get speaking, a lot of who I am will come through. And I want you to glean that for yourself instead of me telling you who I am. So I'm excited about that.
Okay, we're going to learn as we move along who you are. Let's start by knowing where are you right now, that as we speak.
Right now I'm in Oxfordshire in the UK, and today is actually a lovely day. It's warm, nice and warm. Usually it's not very warm, but right from where I'm sitting, the sun is coming through the window, and I hope that the inspiration that will be coming through will be as sunny as the day. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I believe it is going to be. Now, the name Karanja sounds familiar to me.
Yes. So Kenyan by birth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that excites me as well because I am a Kenyan and a British person. So as you can imagine, as I tackle this topic of parenting, I'm coming to it from both my cultural upbringing and also my psychological. I'll be wearing my psychological hat. But here is what's even more interesting. As a scientist, I am also an artist. And when I talk about being an artist, I don't draw or anything, but I use a lot of imagery and a lot of art when I'm expressing myself. Maybe as you can see, I'm very expressive,
Mhm.
very artistic in in the way I use my words. I use me as this vessel.
Mhm.
So I'm excited about being both a Kenyan and a psychologist. Actually, I'm gonna drop this one over there. And you guys, if you think this is pride, I don't want you to think this is pride, but I want to impress upon you that each one of us has something within us and we can express it. We have value to give in the world. So never be afraid to be everything that your heart, in your heart, you are called to be. Yeah. So as much as I'm here in England, I still have my roots. And what I do is combine the both culture and constantly ask myself, how is this particular thing that I am choosing now? How is it helping me? How is it advancing me? So there's a lot of death of beliefs, and there's also a lot of growth of beliefs, right? And it's
Mhm.
about blending. So it's not about forgetting who I am or where I come from and then adopting something completely different. It's about what we call, I'm sure Anthony, you as a writer, you know about this integrative living, right? So
Mhm.
because you're a world citizen, right? So you embrace what is going to advance you and leave behind what does not serve you. So that's what we are. And yes, Kenyan British here.
Wonderful. And how did you come to this space of talking about teenagers? I guess it's not just because you've got teenagers and then you just started up talking about them, because anybody who has children and teenagers in this area can start talking about them. But then there must have been something that triggered you to move into that direction, and I'm curious to know what was that.
Right. Do you know what? When I was about 10 years old,
Mm-hmm.
which now I know is the onset of adolescence, because adolescence starts from about 9 to about 25 years old. So that's the adolescent teenage years, right? And now it's getting even lower, right? When I was about 10 years old, a teacher made a marked difference in my life. I
Mm-hmm.
can say they changed the trajectory of my life. And I believe that's when this seed was planted. I didn't know that at that time, but I began to believe actually the way we live our life can influence and impact and inspire other people.
Mm-hmm.
There is a model I use in my work, and I call it the 3M model of influence. And that's it's a framework. So the first M is modeling, the second M is motivating, and then the third one is mentoring.
Mm-hmm.
Unbeknownst to me at that time, that's who Miss Kamal was to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I developed this thing of wanting actually every I wanted people who came into my space to feel inspired, to feel whole, to know that they can be everything that they would want to be. I mean, I know we only got a very short span of time here, so I'm not gonna go back so much into what was happening in my childhood. But what I can say quickly is it was very dire. It was very impoverished. It wasn't good. But they changed the way I thought about myself, and I began to dream. I began to see myself. Literally, they changed my trajectory, the way I thought about who I am and what I can achieve.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I see that is when the seed was planted. And I found myself as I went to school, and I went to do work or everything I've done. I always chose work that was to inspire and to, especially young people who are going through whatever they're going through, especially because in teenage years there's a lot of bodily and brain changes that are happening, and a lot of identity crisis that happen in teenage years. In fact, we know as psychologists that this stage, the adolescent years, they do actually have an identity crisis. And if this is not reconciled,
Mm-hmm.
young people go into their adulthood with extremely distorted self esteem. You don't know who you are, right? And when you don't know who you are, you and I know that, a house divided, right? You don't really achieve, you cannot focus, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why we see it's a very, very, as Erickson called it, it's sort of a decision time in human development. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the whole body makes a decision of who am I going to be. And in that age is when young people begin to ask themselves, who am I? They begin to ask, do I matter?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And of course, these days, they're asking, am I being seen? Am I being heard? Am I being believed? Am I being valued? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And when those questions are not answered safely, we find our young people gravitating towards all sorts of anything that's going to validate them.
Mm-hmm.
Drugs, we've got drugs, sex, crime, and they're very vulnerable. They can easily be exploited because these groups will say, oh, come here, you belong, we value you, and they will run there because they're looking to belong, they're looking to be believed, they're looking to be part of this something, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's a very crucial age, and you can see, remember I talked about it being from 9 to 25.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very long period, and it's very important for us as parents, as societies, to understand that, so that we can help our young people consolidate who they are, so they are not seeking here, there, and everywhere for validation of who they are. That they know, they come to a point with proper guidance, they come to know that they are worth it, they belong, and they have value. And going back to what that teacher did, that is what she made me believe in myself at a
Mm-hmm.
time when I thought I was nothing, useless, like nothing, which is, and I can tell you from working with every class of people from all over the world, we
Mm-hmm.
have, we now have what we call converging cultures, right? Teenagers are thinking alike. So I'm here in Oxfordshire, right? My daughter, at the click of her on her phone, she can quickly connect with another kid downtown Texas or in Finland, or and they're thinking alike, they're talking alike. And so, and long gone are the days when we would say, oh, I don't want you speaking to that kid down the road, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the influence we had, I don't want you speaking to that kid down the road, it's no longer there. They can click on their phone and they'll speak to a kid in Japan, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's so important that our young people especially understand who they are. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, they will be so easily influenced by all these other groups, sometimes not very well meaning,
Mm,
that can derail them from who they are and their purpose in life. So that's how I came to, I began to take those jobs. And when I went for training, I
mm,
I really wanted to understand humans. Why do people behave as they do? Why? What's happening within me? Why am I making the decisions that I'm making? And why is it that sometimes I want to do something, yet there is this other thing that's making me not do it? So I began to want to study human beings. And then I think because of the impact that teacher had on me, I was more focused on wanting to help young people understand who they are, right? Completely understand who they are as persons. And I always say, and of course with time, I have come to learn that obviously we are more than than we think we are. And you Anthony and I know about the human potential, right?
mhm, mhm,
So what I say, yes, we teach young people about their potential as who they are, what they can achieve. But I'll tell you something. As I did this for years and years, and I saw young people, bloom as they began to say, oh my God, that realization. Oh my God, I am capable of doing this. I am worthy of this. I am all that. And a couple of years ago, I began to think, wait a minute, our young people are realizing who they are,
mhm,
but here is a problem. The parents are not understanding these young people who are now realizing who they are.
mhm,
So, unfortunately, the connection gap is getting wider. And here is what happens, unfortunately. When young people and their parents or the society carers, main carers, are disconnected, there's a lot of loneliness.
mhm,
In fact, research continues to show us that 40% of teenagers are lonely. Why? Because they are unable to connect with the very people they so want to connect with, and
mhm,
that's parents. And
mhm.
why is that? Because we as parents are stuck in the ways we are unwilling to grow. So we have teenagers here, right? So
Yeah.
they come in the world, they are here,
Mhm,
and we are still stuck in our own beliefs, right?
mhm,
And that creates even more of a gap. So when there is a gap between myself and my child, or you and your child, right? That means you will never understand what they think. You will never understand their dreams. You will never understand their fears. You will never understand their aspirations.
mhm.
And I don't think as parents, that's why we got kids, so that we don't understand them, so that they're doing life alone. That's not why we got kids.
Yeah.
We want to have those connections. But a lot of us, there is those beliefs and an old mindset that is keeping us from connecting with our young people. And what do we do most of the time? We begin to point fingers and blame them. Oh,
Mm,
children of these days, right? Children
yeah.
of these days, right?
Mhm,
Instead of saying, wait a minute, how have I changed? How am I growing as a leader? Because most of us, truth be told, we are parents by default, not by design.
mm,
You don't, there are many people who actually don't. I am going to I am going to make an effort to connect with my kid. You just think it's going to happen. It just doesn't happen. The only thing that happens by default is going downhill. As
mm,
John Maxwell says, success is found uphill, and you
mhm,
have to climb uphill.
mhm,
If you just think things are going to happen by themselves,
They will
it,
not. They will go downward.
they just go downhill because that's the force of gravity, right?
Mm,
So when we talked and we talked earlier about being a leader, what
yeah.
I often say to parents is, you are a leader. By default, when you got the kids, you became a leader, right?
Mm, mm-hmm,
Now, it's your choice whether you're going to be a leader, again by default, right? Just by name,
mm,
or by design. And being a leader, you, Anthony, and I know that to be an effective leader, we have to up level. You can't stay still,
yeah.
right? It
Mm-hmm,
takes skills. And I know a lot of people will argue with me, and they do. Oh, I love my kids so much. Yeah, no one says you don't love your kid. Even I love my kids so much, but every day I have to be intentional
mm,
about how I live my life. Remember, I talked about the three M's, right?
yeah. Yeah.
And that's modeling, mentoring, and motivating, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So, how am I living my life as a model? Am I embodying what I want my young person to be, right? Am I being a kind person? Am I being loving? Am I growing? And a lot of times I say to parents when they complain about their kids, I'm like, you're telling your kid to follow their dreams, you're telling them, how are you doing for yourself? Because these kids, they're watching.
they are
They're
watching.
watching us.
Watching. Mm-hmm,
In there is a quote by it says, your actions speak so loud, I can't hear what you're saying.
mm, yeah. I've heard that. It's a great quote, and I
Absolutely. So
think
that's modeling.
yeah.
So
Mm-hmm,
yeah, so that's modeling. And then we go, obviously, there's a mentoring where you share your stories, you share your life. A lot of
mm,
parents are willing to be vulnerable and authentic, to share about their feelings, about their struggles, about their past life. We're not willing, and without that, which is what mentoring is about, right?
mm,
And
mm-hmm,
then we have motivating, right?
mm-hmm,
And especially with a lot of our people from my background, because of the way we were brought up,
mm-hmm,
you know we are bringing the same language that we were brought up with, right? And a
yeah.
lot of that language was very demeaning.
Mm-hmm,
It was not uplifting. So we
yeah.
pass it on. We pass it on to our kids, right?
Mm-hmm,
When we do that, we are not uplifting our kids. So again, when it comes to motivating, it's about the nature of language, of communication that you have with your kids. And it's about growth. Ask yourself, I like to ask parents about your attitude. And when I talk about attitude, I'm not talking about, the way we tell our kids, oh, you've got attitude, right? That's
mm-hmm,
not attitude is a composite of your thoughts. And remember I talked about beliefs, thoughts, your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions, right? That's what
yeah.
attitude is all about. So
Mm-hmm,
how are you growing as a person? How are you growing as a person? How are you growing as a person? And how do you know that you're growing as a parent, as a leader, as a person? This is what I call a litmus test, right?
yeah.
This is like ask yourself, why am I doing this at this time? If you can answer why, right? Why? Like, why am I reacting like this? Why am I asking of my kid to do this? Why? If you can why, then you know you're a growing person. Because why am I asking us to ask our wife? Because a lot of us don't even know what we do, and we demand the same from our kids. A lot of
Mm,
parents will say, "Oh, that's because that's how our parents did it." Yeah,
mm,
that's how our parents did it. Or we'll say something like, "Oh, my parents treated me like that, and I'm okay." And we forget, actually, we are not okay. A lot of us are filled with trauma. A
mm-hmm.
lot of us are full of trauma.
And when we
And
come
how
to
do
that,
you?
there's a
Mhm.
question I would ask. Um,
Yes.
and once I'll go back to where we are coming from, and now the world is not as it used to be. The things that we are
Hmm.
experiencing now, we may have an abundance of things that we lacked when we were growing up. I've experienced
Yeah.
this with a lot of parents, and I don't know how you handle this.
Hmm.
They say, because I have what I need, I have what I can give my children, I'm not going to let my children go through the pains that we went through while growing up.
Mm.
So whatever the kid wants, I'm going to give him or her. He's not going to walk to school. He's not going to, I mean, not going to go through any of the pains I went through when I was growing up. How do you handle this case?
That is something that we hear so much.
Mm,
Again, let's go back to why.
mm-hmm,
That kind of why, you have to ask yourself, is my why love? Is it
mm-hmm,
right? So you're not going to let you walk to school, right?
yeah,
Because you're so afraid. Your pain is the reason that you will not allow them to. Yeah.
mm-hmm,
But what if your why was, I'm not going to let my kid go to school because maybe it's raining or it's dangerous, or it's things like, it's based on love, actually wanting to, not, it's not coming from a space of fear.
mm-hmm,
Because when things are coming from a space of fear, and this is where trauma comes in, right?
mm-hmm,
And I'll tell you, for example, another thing, based on, I'm not going to let my kid go through this.
mm,
One parent told me, "Oh, I don't allow my kids to eat beans because beans remind me of poverty, that we
yeah,
didn't have we didn't have meat, or that's why we ate beans."
exactly.
Aha. So I said to them, to the parent, right? That is your story, and that's true. And for you, beans remind you of that. But what if you change that story to, what is the value of beans?
Mm,
Instead of it coming from fear, from agony, from even disgust for some of them, you're
mm-hmm,
asking yourself, what is the value of beans? Is there any value? Of course. Beans are actually a very healthy, it's a very healthy protein, right?
yeah, mm-hmm,
So I'm going to start eating beans because they have value for me and my health. I'm going to encourage my kids to eat beans because they have value for their.
mm-hmm,
So you see, you're coming from a positive and loving stance, instead
yeah,
of coming from a traumatized, painful state, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And this is where, again, mindset comes in. And it's important to, for example, allow my kid to walk to school, right?
mm-hmm,
Because I can tell you, I used to walk miles and miles to school, and it was
mm-hmm,
it was a bad journey. It cracked my feet open, right? It was crazy.
mm-hmm,
But thankfully, because of me renewing my mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was able, I mean, I my daughter from when we love to walk because I was able to recalibrate that kind of thinking instead of seeing it as agony, as pain. I'm looking and thinking, this is healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And we school, we get to chat. We have a longer time to have our little connection and conversations. We
Mm-hmm.
get to meet other people along the way. So you see, you've changed your story,
Yes.
and that is what my parents to do. That, but it requires that we heal from our traumas because
Mm,
it's going to be hard for you to do that if it's still coming from a pain, painful situation, from a painful stance. So
mm-hmm.
you end up actually denying your kids the positives because you're coming from a painful state, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's very important. Again, that's why when I work with parents, I really encourage us to look at our own traumas, right?
Mm,
Because,
mm-hmm.
and I'll give you another example, right? A lot of people say, oh, they force their kids to finish the food, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
and for example, in England, that's force feeding, right? And it's a form of
Yeah.
abuse, right? Why? Because when we were growing up, food was scarce, right?
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
you can't waste food, right? You can't waste food, right?
Mm,
And then we have that, we have that, we are coming from a space of fear instead of asking the kid, right? So here is the food, right? Only serve however much you think you're going to finish, right?
mm-hmm.
Serve whatever you think you're going to finish. Now, I want you to be resourceful and I want you to be a good steward of the food, of even like switching off the lights, or if you don't need it, don't place it on the plate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they are able to, in that way, your kids are able to manage themselves without fear, right?
Yeah.
They're
Mm-hmm.
thinking, I'm gonna put a little on my plate. If I'm not full, I can always go back for some more, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you're changing the story within, right?
Yeah.
And not saying, oh, you must finish. And unfortunately, especially I've heard this from a lot of people from our background is, oh, you better finish this because other people are starving. Now the truth is, whether you finish that food on the plate or not, it's not going to stop someone who's starving wherever they are at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The better language to use is, be a good steward. And here is why this is so important. Be a good steward. If you don't need it, don't put it on the plate because that means you're going to waste it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and and it's not, being wasteful is not very attractive, is it? I don't think it's
Yeah.
very
It's not.
attractive.
It's
And
not.
then what's going to happen? The good thing with these ideas is it gets the young person thinking so that they are able to transfer that skill, that mental skill of being resourceful, that mental skill of being a good steward to other things. So they'll be like, right, if I'm having a drink, right, I don't have to fill the cup, like I don't have to fill the cup.
Mm,
I'll just get however much I need, right? And things like, if, for example, if you're not in a room, switch off the lights, right? You switch
mhm,
because I'm being resourceful. You're not switching off the lights because of fear that your parents are going to scream, or because you can't afford lighting and heating.
mm,
You are switching it off because you don't need it. So that thinking, actually, that thinking is so premium because it goes even into things like, for example, when our teenagers, when they're going to buy their own things, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they really need something and they're like, actually don't need it, that means I don't have to buy something that I don't need.
Yeah.
And you and I know the reason so many people are in debt is because they're buying things, trying to, just hoarding and trying to impress other people, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But imagine if they said to themselves, do I really need this? I don't need it. And then they don't feel that those feelings of, I'm trying to compete with someone, or if I don't have this, I'm not enough, or I'm not in style, I am not, when you teach these core values, they actually translate and transfer into so many other areas of life. For even when it comes to time, right?
Mm-hmm.
To be resourceful with their times, they'll be like, wait a minute, I can't just sit here doing nothing. I'm not using time, which is a resource, in the best way. You see? So
Mm-hmm.
these ideas, but we as parents have to be able to demonstrate that. Remember, we talked again, we come back to being a model
Being a model.
completely, and then being a mentor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sharing your life, and also being a motivator, right? So
Yeah.
it keeps coming back to you as a parent, as a leader. How am I a model? Because I tell you what, if you're not that,
Mm-hmm.
your kids will do what they want. Yeah, you can speak all you like,
Yeah.
you can believe all you like, but they will do what they will. They will most likely follow what you do, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And talking of time, our time has come.
it has come to an
So we're gonna model. We're gonna be a model and the mentor and motivate them to go and do what we are doing.
yes,
Yes.
absolutely. I know this is a topic that we can talk, for for a long time.
Yeah.
But one of the things I just want, if you forget anything I say today, if you forget anything I say today, I want you to remember your attitude will determine your altitude. And why do I say this? Think about your attitude as a growing attitude. Are you a growing person, or are you a stuck person? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you've got that growing attitude, you're gonna go high and you're gonna go wide. And remember, we talked about our young people modeling who and what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to be an influencer, think about, have I got an attitude of growth? Because if I have an attitude of growth, I know my altitude will go high and wide, and so will my teenagers, especially.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. And thank you for sharing everything that you shared with us here. We appreciate. And now, since this conversation is a long conversation, I'm thinking that there are people who could be interested in following up with you to engage you more and get to know how they are going to deal with their teenagers. How can they follow up with you?
Right. Yeah, you can. My name, again, my name is Angela Karanja. You can follow me on Facebook, LinkedIn, literally all socials. You'll find
Mm-hmm.
me there. If you can't find me as Angela Karanja, look for Raising Remarkable Teenagers. In that, you can even just Google it. You'll you'll find us. You'll find us there, and I would be so delighted to walk this journey of growth with you and in your kids' life and in your family's life.
Yeah, thank you very much. So once again, that's www.raisingremarkableteenagers.com. That's how you can connect with Angela.
Yeah, and
Thank you
if
very
you're
much.
those that like writing an email, right, it's Angie at raisingremarkableteenagers.com.
Angie, that is Angie.
Yes.
Okay, Angie at raisingremarkableteenagers.com. Okay. Yeah, we have got always people who are comfortable in one field and not the other. So it's a good option that you've given. So that's about it for today. We really appreciate you coming here. And yeah, it's been an honor to have you here at Now Tell Us.
Thank you
So
so much. I really appreciate you.
yeah, but before we go, I would like you to leave us with a few words that we should always remember. This is something I always ask our guest. Which are the
Yeah.
few words that we should always remember in one or two sentences?
I'm going to go with, as a person, never underestimate your value as an influencer. As a person, never underestimate your value as an influencer. And this requires that you keep growing. So that's what I say. I mean, this would go for parents, for that's listening. Never underestimate your value. To be able to be you've got so much to give, and never underestimate that. But that
Wow.
requires that you don't stand still. You have to keep growing.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, never underestimate your value as an influencer. Those are words from psychologist Angela Karanja of raisingremarkableteenagers.com. Yeah, this has been Now Tell Us. I have been your host, Anthony Moirore, and together with our guest today, psychologist Angela Karanja, we are saying bye for now.
Bye bye for now.
Yeah, bye.